Once we settle the algebra argument, what else do we need or not need to know? Seeming to value education, our culture pays little attention to actually defining, let alone refining, the critical knowledge base needed by the general population, meaning school children for starters. In this void, we have fake news and freely compromised selective truth-telling running, unfiltered through everyday life. But what else could we possibly expect? Half-truths and downright falsehoods feed on themselves in a downward spiral, a race to the bottom of the pit of ignorance. If a quest for knowledge with value doesn't distinguish us from the rest of the animal kingdom, what does? Education can all too easily end up being just another part of the goods production process. When we basically default to teaching kids about what we think they need to make a living, we are selling everyone short, starting with our youth. We need new ideas about what school actually means. It can't just be about educating or some sort of educational package, as in, here is what you need to be a part of the working world today, but instead must be holistic. Schools are simply too institutionally dominant in young people's lives to give them only a limited view of what should know for us all to survive and thrive. For example, what are we telling young people about how they might choose to think about themselves, how their world actually works and how it ended up this way, and what they need to know so that they can make choices about their role in that world? And this is just for starters. We also need to question, how did we come to have to go to school in the first place? Children are not social beings, and for millennia were not forced to be. The mental capacity for this is simply not there. A bunch of youngsters in the little societies that their schools become is a prescription for disasters ranging from the personal trauma of exclusion discrimination based on being different, to unspeakable acts of violence bred from frustrations with the unfiltered, aimless musings of similarly disaffected companions. See Lord of the Flies. In early human societies and their animal counterparts, parents mentored their progeny until they learned the essentials of basic survival. All youngsters' education was on-the-job training, parents or other community members showing their children how things are done so that the group can continue to thrive. They knew what to do. They simply had to teach whatever it was that they had been taught. Once larger-scale societies began forming, things got more complicated. In early and in certain current human societies, children around the age of puberty were, or are, ceremoniously inducted into their societies and guided to understand the obligations that go along with this. What do our children really need to know today to navigate the complexity they are already encountering? Do they go along with what they have learned, or follow an inclination to resist? Or can they attempt to innovate away from what seems to be expected of them, but just doesn't feel right? Facts and skills can build up our functionality, and then a foundation of seeing the world more holistically, in depth and as realistically as possible, leads to the world in general making much more sense. This will help us deal more meaningfully with our world's many contradictions, stresses, and breakdowns, not just be swept along with them. For one thing, we could have been trained somewhere in the educational pipeline in the art and science of getting along, so that our associations with others would promote productivity and harmony as mutual purposes. Instead, not only did we not learn that, but learned mostly the wrong confrontational things about what it's like to be tied to a group. Don't people's street smarts just fill in these blanks? Depending on what street you are on, some real-life lessons will be learned, but not necessarily the most critically needed or helpful lessons, and they may not give you the foundation for communicating as readily with your peers as you might need to in order to function successfully. Getting agreement on all this will be a challenge, but it is essential that we present the arguments for a comprehensive educational scope, where a set of logical standards can be offered and the appropriate cases made for incorporating these into curricula. Indoctrination will unfortunately still be left to individual households, religious sects, and what have you. But in the meantime, young people can at least be made aware of the dimensions of the world around them and how these may or may not affect them, based on a variety of other factors, including those indoctrinations. But that is only a small part of the big picture. What's in it for me? What is described in this video is the legacy for most of us, unfortunately. If you needed another reason to take what we are offering in this channel seriously, this can be one. The reforms we are suggesting may be a bit late for you, but may not be for your children, extended family, or society. There is nothing particularly difficult about any of these changes. but a career in education may very well be more attractive to you when you see that it can be done right.